So hello and welcome to this video on the ADDAC System 306 VC Transitions. Let's check out what's to come before we get into it. So the VC Transitions is a simple but very powerful module for creating microcontroller-like effects within your modular system. Very performable, but works great under CV modulation as well. We have 5 channels, 5 outputs, and these 5 channels. Each channel is effectively a performance offset controller. We set the minimum voltage that will come out on the left, and the span, the range of potential voltages on the right. Now there's a graphic on screen from ADDAC that helps explain this. We also get a switch to say which way this behaviour will change according to the slider or CV input. And you can get lots of different control and performance out of this. You can patch it into anything, so I've made a range of patches to show you that, modulating drums, lengths of things, opening up VCAs, changing effects, changing grain sizes on samplers. Very performable. I instantly want a few of them to dot around certain modules and have this kind of ultra performance macro system. Let's get into it. So for this first patch, we've paired up the VC Transitions with the Endorphins Black Noir. And it's a really potent, fun pairing that I keep not filming this demo and just playing around jamming with the thing. But of course, there's work to do, being this demo. So I'm using the VC Transitions here as 5 channels of offset voltages to control various parameters, such as the length of the snare drum, the blend of the noise used in the drum machine from white noise to metallic cymbal-like noise, the bit crushing of this noise, filtering of the whole drum kit, and the amount and the depth of the effects. Really super performable. And we'll go through how this works, but first let me flick some of these switches because this is very performable as well, and we'll get into it. So the VC Transitions is basically 5 very controllable, performable offset generators. If I just turn everything down, and on each channel we get a minimum voltage, a span, which is the range of potential voltage, and the direction this voltage moves. Now the bottom channel was controlling my filtering, so for us to hear anything, I'm going to have to set some kind of minimum voltage. Sounds fine to me. So what happens as I move the controller is, this output will move through the potential range of voltages to its maximum. So I'm going to set a maximum amount of filter control here. And that will do, just cutting out some of the low end. And the switch changes the direction. So if I was to flick it up, instead of being the minimum voltage on the left and up to the full range, the full span on the right, it would be at the minimum and then filtering out, going up that range to the left. Now going back to the top channel is controlling the length of the noise on the snare drum. Again, currently there isn't any, we're just kind of getting this dunk tone. So let's set a minimum voltage to bring some noise in. And I want that minimum just to be that nice little noise hit on the snare. But just kind of cancelling the filtering out, but moving this to set this up. I'd like this to be full all the way there. So now I have a transition that moves the filtering and the length of the noise on the snare. And there we've built up a nice, customly scaled and offset, performable transition. We can of course perform with the switches. It might be that you want to move up, change the behaviour, bring that bass back in, and then flicking the switches, bringing you back down to another state in terms of the control of the drum machine. We also get a CV input to control this movement. So here's a simple looping envelope, and this then becomes the depth of modulation. Let's make this a bit slower. And you can see that signal on the LED cable. Now this goes up to audio rates, so speeding up my looping envelope. But it doesn't stop there in terms of you either perform this or you modulate it. You can obviously perform the modulation. So instead of fading in the changes, you could fade in the modulation of those changes. Now, if I modulate this audio source, I'm getting some really nice audio rate, gargly, mangled modulation. And again, the modulation that's coming in is being scaled and offset by this minimum and span control, making a really customizable kind of CV distribution. So let's get into some other patches. So in this patch, I've made a complex gesture by mapping it to filter resonance, filter cutoff, filter mode between low pass, high pass and band pass, routing it to the event boss from abstract data that we can see there on the right, which is performing a logic function, so when a high enough voltage comes in, it will let this gate pattern through, and then it's also splitting off one of these modulation signals, squiggly cable there, into the rate of this function generator. So watch and listen from one state to a more complex state on the other side. I'll take the effects off, and for now let's also split out this stackable cable and keep each output to doing just one thing. There's also pulse width modulating on the oscillator, and of course with that CV input, we can modulate through these complex gestures, and I've just used this LED cable so you can see this LFO. Moving around. So in this patch we're controlling this gorgeous stereo granular piano sound from the Nebulae version 2. And the control and detail that the VC Transitions gives me just pairs really well. Now again, we've got the 5 voltages coming out, their start position, their range, and the direction of movement from 0 to this maximum voltage that we set. All controlled by that slider or the CV input. Here I want this manual control, and it's controlling things like the start position in this loop, the size of the grains, the blend, the overlap of the grains. And it just allows for this level of kind of macro control that's just easier to set up, to be brutally honest, than throwing a load of random modulation in and grabbing loads of attenuators or offsets. It just works. Let's hear it one more time, because I love kind of sitting in this stereo sound bath that the VC Transitions is controlling. So in this patch, I've come up with a rather novel way of using the VC Transitions to control chord tones. Now there's 4 voltages going into the 4 channels of the ADDAC 207 intuitive quantizer. They've each got a different range, so as I move across this slider, they're all going to move a different amount of pitch. So if I go to one sound at once, here's one of the channels, panned hard left, make sure you're listening in stereo of course. So not a huge range of motion there. Then this one can move much further. So just those 2 voices together. You can hear the channel on the right moves much further, allowing me to play around with these different chord tones. Now the 3rd channel, again, doesn't move very much. And the 4th channel moves the most. So all 4 playing together. These are panned in various ways and running through some effects, but they're basic sines and triangles. It allows me to find possibly chord voicings that I wouldn't naturally choose. And of course, coupling it with the intuitive quantizer, I could take some notes out and have more harmonious intervals where I don't have any notes that say a semitone apart next to each other. Now I could take, say, a random CV, this is just some sample and hold, into the CV in, and start to randomly shift between these varying chord tones, all within the restrictions of the range I've set on that span control. So in this patch I have the VC Transitions under some sample and hold modulation from this Pico Random, controlling the wave folding and the wavetable position on this E352, and also the mix amount, the regeneration, the feedback and the shifting on this frequency shifter from Audio Damage. Now removing the modulation, here's that range of motion. Modulation back in. Also going to slow it down. And then the attenuation for the CV is on the slider. So for this final patch, I've set up a transition that is going to change various parameters on this eventide delay and this music thing modular spring reverb. So again, each of the 5 voltages scaled and offset accordingly to get changes in feedback, filtering, mix amount on the delay, and also the amount of reverb, the blend on that spring reverb. So let's grab an LFO and over time modulate between the affected version of the sequence and the non-affected version of the sequence. So using that LFO, we're blending between the affected version and the dry version. We can of course attenuate this down and get more subtle hints of those effects with this LFO scaled and offset through these 5 channels, giving me the exact control that I want. So that's it for this video of the VC Transitions from ADDAC System. A great performance tool, custom macro control making module that quite instantly I wanted several of as a performable effects controller, performable drum machine modulator, and all these different patches. More information in the description. Use that timing index to skip around the patches as you wish. Cheers for watching. Support my work on patreon.com/DivKid. Cheers for watching.